The Revelato, in his video The Highest Archon, writes, quote, "The Romans would later elaborate this symbolism further by identifying Saturn as not just time's keeper, but the god of the Golden Age, a paradoxical figure who both limited and liberated." Quote, "In Neoplatonism, Saturn represents what the Greeks called pyrrhus, the principle of limitation that gives form to the formless. As Jung notes in Ion, Saturn's position in medieval astrology was deeply ambivalent, both the greater malefic and yet also the ruler of contemplation and deep wisdom. This dual nature reflects Saturn's role in what alchemists would later call the nigredo, the blackening phase necessary for transformation. The black star becomes, paradoxically, the source of illumination through restriction. Al-Biruni describes Saturn as the tester, the planet that reveals truth through trial and limitation. And quote, "The secret Saturn and Uranus holds is that limitation itself is the gateway to the limitless, that it is only by embracing Saturn's alchemical nigredo that one can attain the albedo of spiritual regeneration." Uranus has a lot to do with paradoxes, but people really don't appreciate how close Saturn and Uranus really are. Neighbors of ostensibly opposite nature on the tops of the pillar of mercy and severity as Chokhmah and Binah, how they shack up as roommates in Aquarius as co-rulers. Saturn, through limitation, initiates you into the limitlessness of Uranus. This is when you rise above Saturn, therefore existing outside its orbit, rather than being imprisoned by it via a relationship of fear, therefore placing you within its orbit and subject to the prison-like Yaldabaoth-esque nature of the world. In fact, Saturn as imprisonment can help you realize through Uranus helps you realize that there is no prison. The world has a prison-like nature, but Uranus has the ability to turn around what you're holding in your hand to see it a different way. And so Capricorn initiates you into Aquarius. You observe the prison-like nature of reality, and rather than having the restrictions lifted as Jupiter would, Uranus helps you realize that there really is no prison, that Eden is actually all around you. Saturn and Uranus are so close that even when they seem like opposites, they're going to have a lot of stuff in common. Saturn can in many ways be as paradoxical as Uranus. Its dual nature is both as Satan, as the terrestrial Saturn polarized towards the world, and as Yad-He Vav-He Elohim, or Yahweh Elohim, which is the Plutonic Saturn who teaches atonement, alchemy, and the ability to rise above Saturn's nature. It's both the planet of justice and injustice, not at different moments, but all at the same time. How can that be? How can Saturn both give us the experience of an unjust and perfectly fair world simultaneously at the same time? And the answer is time. The soul lives with God and in a non-dual soup of unity and perfection. It actively wants to experience what injustice and imperfection is like, just so it can understand, as Binah is understanding, of course. And so it subjects itself to the fall of man by eating the fruit of knowledge of good and evil to do this, and casts itself down into the darkness, blindness, and ignorance of Saturn to have this done. To answer the previous question, it is time. Saturn is the planet of karma, but it's also the slowest traditional planet. The point of this realm isn't to be instantaneously corrected for every little thing you do wrong. Otherwise, the moon, which cycles through the whole zodiac in 29 days, would be the planet of karma. Karma and justice, people facing the shadow of their deeds, is insanely slow. Most often, the karma isn't paid in one's own lifetime. But still, the logos spermatikos of God that pervades everything guarantees perfect fairness and reason. And so everything is still perfectly just. And Saturn can guarantee you that nothing gets past Saturn, and all debts are paid. And yet, we still get to have the subjective experience of an unjust world, because from the perspective of a human lifetime, it looks like there's inequality and injustice. This is the failure to embody one of Saturn's principal virtues, patience. Everything with Saturn is insanely slow. The virtue is to not watch the pot boil, and to instead bury yourself in your work and what you were put on earth to do, rather than waiting for people to get their justice. But this is the genius of Saturn. By playing with time, we get to have both the experience of justice and injustice in one fell swoop and in one motion. It's the planet of ignorance and the planet of downloads. I've been saying more and more often, chosen ones have 3 planets that hold a lot of dominance over their life without needing to do anything or call out for anything. And that's Saturn, Uranus, and Pluto. In fact, Uranus and Pluto energy are the characteristic differentiating factors that separate chosen ones from descending souls. Sun represents the top of hierarchy. Saturn represents the bottom of hierarchy. Chosen ones are a really interesting case because they're, as the kids like to say, Sigma. Or put another way, people who are uncompromisingly authentic and beat to their own drum, resulting in being exiled from the hierarchy and pecking order completely. It's all in Safariel's 1898 New Manual of Astrology. Uranus rules exiles and estrangements. To be chosen out of the world. To be plucked out of a system and outcasted. I'd say it has a lot to deal with outliers as well. And when entropy is introduced and randomness is introduced to a pattern, it leads to exceptions to rules. The rules are a set system of patterns. Astrology was perfectly balanced for thousands of years as a perfectly balanced system where we have our 7 traditional planets, 2 signs to each planet, and then Uranus comes along, totally disruptive. We have no idea what to do because Uranus' very existence is an exception to the rules of what traditional astrology had laid out for us. We don't know what to do with this planet. We don't know what it rules. Okay, it rules Aquarius, making it the first planet that solely rules one sign without like a sister planet, like in the case of Sun and Moon. Uranus is the outlier, the outcast, and the randomness that's introduced to a system is the mutation that completely changes the system. It is the outlier. A big one that is hinted at but not explicitly stated is Uranus as being disruptive. New Breed says that chosen ones are here to disrupt the matrix and the system and whatnot. Just your mere presence in a space without any words is extremely disruptive. Your presence shakes the bejesus out of every group you're around. Uranus has to do with not being understood for a lot of reasons. One of which is that Uranus as Chokhmah is that which is basically ineffable and not understandable at all. Which is why Saturn as Binah means understanding Binah meaning understanding exists in the first place. But also, Uranus deals with the kind of genius that's not appreciated until decades after the fact. With Uranus, the future is now, and the people of the present, from that standpoint, are in the past, like cavemen. They really don't get it, and really don't get you. To quote Kanye West, I'm living in the future, so the present is my past. My presence is a present. Kiss my ass. Yeah, that'd make for a good coat of arms. You may get, I never looked at it like that a lot, because Uranus has rings too. It literally just takes Saturn's structure, rotates it, and looks at it from a different angle. Saturn has its rings. Uranus is like we take Saturn and we turn it up on its angle, because Uranus rings are on a different axis. So it's like you're rotating Saturn's structure and looking at it from a different angle. Where most would look at your life and only see isolation, loss, poverty, and misery, you can take the entire scheme of your life in your hand, rotate it, see it from a different angle, and see how it's actually a perfect framework for spiritual riches and a secret blessing. As mentioned in my recent video, The Uranian Mysteries, Uranus has to do with randomness injections into reality. And we see that with Safariel's correspondence of uncertain fortunes. The planet that's said to rule astrology and bestow gifts to astrologers and fortune tellers, ironically, itself produces uncertain fortunes. Uranus' sense of humor and well of paradoxes runs so deep. When Saturn makes everything rot around you and all you've got is a streak of bad luck, people generally look to the sky for answers. And in doing so, they look to Uranus, the god of the sky. And this is spiritual awakening. The sky is the limit, they say. And to peer into the sky is to peer into the infinite, because Uranus is without end, infinite possibility in motion, unmanifest and undefinable, as it consists of the quantum superpositions that precede manifest things and the definitions that come with them. Everyone here on Earth is asleep, in a stupor of Saturn's ignorance, largely due to fear, largely all going back to eating that fruit of knowledge of good and evil, which made us disavow and ignore negative things in life, effectively pushing them down into our shadow where we can't see them, and lusting after the positive things. And so they're in delusion and ignorance due to fear of confrontation of the truth. Uranian energy is one half of what will make you hated, in addition to the Platonic, which is the subject of another post. Your presence alone is an earthquake that shakes people awake violently. If you get to speaking words, forget about it. People are going to go crazy and hate you. Uranus is infinite wisdom, as Chokhmah means wisdom. When it's experienced potently, your brain starts to hurt, because so much foreign knowledge from literally nowhere is being downloaded into your head at an insanely rapid speed. You didn't think it, you barely reasoned it, because all of that is Mercury stuff, and using logic and evidence to get there. The information came from divine inspiration instead. It was a download, and the downloads of Uranus are extremely overwhelming. These are the awakening symptoms. Uranus in astrology is called the Awakener. It shakes you awake out of the dumb, ignorant sleep and stupor of the world. It's so overwhelming that most people would go crazy by just the slightest visit of it. And so we have Saturn to thank for buffering the experience, because Saturn makes everything slower. Not to mention that wisdom in the hands of someone who has no understanding, which is Binah, or maturity or responsibility or self-mastery, is a weapon that's going to harm its wielder in no time. Saturn needs to test you and needs to challenge you and put you through trials to make sure you have the mastery necessary to handle the infinite wisdom Uranus has to give. So initiation into the heavens and its infinite wisdom is given piecemeal by Saturn, as Saturn makes sure every little scrap of wisdom given to you is earned and being placed in the hands of a responsible, mature, wise person who can bear the weight of such wisdom without giving into madness or misuse of the wisdom. The powers of the infinite must not fall into the hands of the profane. And so Saturn will continue to have you reincarnate into this prison to continuously keep getting tested and keep receiving your report card until you can actually graduate to the station of one perfected and responsible enough to handle the infinite power of God, the Most High. It's given slowly, piecemeal, over multiple lifetimes. Finally, Uranus is the impulse to rebellion which leads to exile. By being rebellious and eating the fruit of knowledge of good and evil and becoming dualistic, we were exiled from the Garden of Eden. By growing back towards the divine through virtue and non-dual unity, we are outcasted and exiled from society as an outcast and a reject that no one wants around. I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hateth you. If you are a chosen one, you have your own way of looking at the world, and it never really once occurred to you to change it to fit in. The rebellion against groupthink is in you, and you may not even notice it. And this act of Uranian rebellion and individuality sets you apart and leads to exile, this time for the heavens to be what accepts you back in, as the same Uranus that gets you kicked out of Eden is the one that invites you back in, overcoming duality by demonstrating that everything is an interconnected network of equal parts. In Luke 17:21, Jesus states, "The kingdom of God is within you." Eden is all around you as well, but with original sin of eating the fruit of knowledge of good and evil and the duality that comes with it, as Carl Jung says in his Red Book, hell is in this respect to heaven and in that respect to hell. And that's what's all around us. It's Eden, but it doesn't look that way to us because we're dualistic. We haven't achieved the union of opposites. When the union of opposites is completed, we enter back into sight of the Eden that was around us the whole time. And so the Uranian impulse to rebellion from the ways of the world, moving against the flow of sins, the 7 deadly ones that's rampant in all the people around us, tracing it back to the source of the original sin, we re-enter Eden via an act of rebellion. And as a result of being exiled from the world now, and not exiled from Eden, we can't understand God's infinite wisdom and sky view of reality. The outer planets of Uranus and Neptune are extremely puzzling, confusing, and bizarre, bordering on ineffable. We seek Saturn and we seek the fall of man precisely so we can fragment reality into parts and into dualities that give us contrast. We can't understand hot without cold, and so we can't have understanding of a non-dual unified God in any way, except in a partial way by breaking that mirror God into fragmented parts and putting it back together like puzzle pieces to see the picture it creates. And this is the supreme wisdom Saturn has to offer. We can't make sense of Uranus. It's infinitely vast. It's actually, by definition, undefinable, because that which is pre-existence as mere potential, randomness, and quantum maybe-ness is that which hasn't had the opportunity to exist yet. Saturn is what gives it that opportunity. Saturn is the liminal bound of real and unreal, of potential and manifestation. Saturn is the author of form and structure. Saturn is Binah, understanding. We have to stand under God to understand. We have to fall and experience the tragedy of God's fragmentation as a result of the demonic and worldly in order to understand what God is. And this is vital. It's vital to understand that the consciousness of God observes through us. The most pure state of our awareness is also God's awareness. Everything we experience, we record onto God because we are fragments of the one God. And if there is no definition beyond Saturn, then God relies on us to understand the world it's creating. Yes, without experiencing fragmentation as us and through us, God itself would have no understanding. God needs to create itself under itself. God needs to cast itself down from its own divine, perfect, and unified nature in order to gain understanding through contrast. But that same understanding gradually initiates one back into the perfected and heavenly nature. As we draw closer to the source, Saturn allows us to see things more as God sees them. And that's in Kabbalah, Binah's vision of sorrow. Yeah, I mean, I was watching a New Breed video today, and he was talking about a very, ubiquitous chosen one experience of like everybody around you is so fucking disappointing. And dude, I feel that so hard. Everybody that I try to connect to, it's like they just do the most disappointing things. It's just sad, you know what I mean? It's low vibrational, it's cruel. It's also self-defeating on their part. It's everything about it is just disappointing. But the Most High, he says, gives us that experience to help us understand how God relates to us. We do so many things that are disappointing as well. So how we as chosen ones feel about descending souls, God very often feels about us. We very often fall short of God's perfection and God's mandates and God's laws. And that's what the vision of sorrow is. God, as the Most High, looks down on us from a place of sorrow and it's sadness and disappointment due to our fallen state. And now we get that same experience. We look upon the world, we look at the descending souls, we see all the wickedness and all the low ways of the people, and all these people in our lives are so fucking disappointing. And that's the vision of sorrow. And this helps us to see things how God sees things. That's the purpose of Saturn, the purpose of Binah, the purpose of the vision of sorrow is it's helping to reinitiate us into the sky view, to the vision of Uranus, that is the Most High God. I say, at the end of it all, we have the sky view of Uranus, the sky god. Kronos, which in Roman is named Saturnus, castrated his father Uranus, separating us from the infinite boundless sky. It was a separation from the infinite of the heavens above. Saturn cleaved it with his sickle of Cronus. That separating slice is itself the shadow. The shadow of all of our deeds, since we ate the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, is that separation. It's all the karma that's warped our soul into an ugly, ignorant wreck. That's the wall separating us from the divine. The same ugliness and ignorance is what makes up Saturn's nature. Saturn rules ugly things and ignorance, and it creates the wall separating us from the infinite. Our psychological shadow and the Saturnian fear associated with it separates us from joining the conscious mind with the collective unconscious. Our sins are the wall between us and God, the obstacle towards henosis, union with the divine. When Pluto is involved, as it is involved with all chosen ones, forcing the conscious mind inward to face the shadow of our deeds that span so many lifetimes, inevitably the Sun and Saturn are brought into conjunction, creating the union of opposites that grants us access to the infinite wisdom of God found in Uranus. But this is only possible for one who's been perfected through Saturn's trials of darkness. And a chosen one is one who is branded with Pluto's image, and therefore is forced into inwardness. Therefore, the darkness and terrors the chosen one faces are part of an initiation back into the heavens and back into Eden. You just have to make sure Saturn's report card comes back good over your multiple lifetimes to get access to the heavens of Uranus' infinite sky, which, if followed, is the path back to Eden.